Hi, and welcome to Hypothetically Intentional, where we ask the question, what if we set intentions with everything we do? I'm your host, Michelle Albers, and today back with us, we have oh my gosh, doctorate. we have Dr. Catherine Kronemeyer here, and
Yay.
we are going to talk about, welcome, Kat. I'm glad you're here.
Thank you.
We are going to talk about this time of year, in quotes, right? It's the time of year where things are wrapping up and a new year is coming and everybody starts all this buzz about all the things and it can layer a whole lot of stuff. So our goal for this podcast, our intention for this podcast is to end with a RecipEASE, RecipEASE, to support you in all that is this time of year. What do you think, Kat?
That's awesome.
I mean, we've been talking about it. Because sometimes to show up in a way that's useful and organized, you need to do a little pre-conversation. And we
Yeah.
did that today
Yeah.
in a deep, deep way. We don't usually do quite this much, but it felt
No.
good.
Yeah. We're usually fly by the seat of our pants kind of gals, and this was much more organized than our usual. So hopefully it shows up that way.
I love that, like what you just said is literally part of the of the structure of like why we did. It's like because everything's chaotic and overwhelming often this time of year and it's layered. And so what do you need when things are chaotic and overwhelming and layered? Structure.
Right. Right. Do you want to talk about like how people can feel this time of year potentially with all of the layers and all of the stressors that show up, and like stressors being like really fun stressors and also stressors like being like really unfortunate, unhappy, sad
Mhm.
stressors too, right? So like both are often true this time of year.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's just dive right in. I'm gonna let you take it away.
You want me to go?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. So Michelle and I came up with this list of like common feelings or emotions that people might have this time of year. And I'm just going to rattle through them and you might be like, oh, yeah, that's me. So just kind of note where you might land on our list. So we talked about fear, feeling just stressed in general, wanting to avoid things, feeling like worried or angsty, um, feeling like you don't trust yourself, maybe not trusting other people too. I mean, that's perfectly valid. Exhaustion, anxious, angry, depressed, guilty, feeling like worthlessness or inadequacy, wanting or anticipating like the magic pill to come along so that everything's like good and you don't have to worry about any of it. This can definitely be like a pity party time of year, so feeling like really sad for yourself. Um, Maybe either side of conflict, right? So like conflict avoidance or anticipating conflict or like poking the bear. Maybe spite, revengefulness, jealousy, feeling pressured or just generally overwhelmed. So that's a long list, and probably there's multiple things on there for each person that is currently listening.
Right. Yeah. And maybe more. I mean, I
Right.
don't think it's comprehensive, right? I think it's,
No, because
yeah.
we didn't even talk about like grief and
I
sadness.
was just thinking that same thing. Oh, while we're synced.
Yeah.
Yeah, we didn't even go there.
Nope. Nope. We like stayed at the higher level, like stuff. But yeah, grief and sadness is 100% it. Like wounded, that can all be on the list too.
Hmm. And I feel like this time of year, and maybe it's not a fair assessment, but it just feels this way to me every single year with myself, with friends, with clients, with family. Like it gets layered, more layered than usual this time of year. There's something about the holiday season and the end of one year and the beginning of a new year and all the like it's like a pressure cooker, all the pressure that builds, all
Hmm.
those different layers that can come in for us. And it's like, well, now what? Like I don't want to dread any time of year. I certainly don't want to dread the time of year that has so much hope and potential if we can get out of the list we just mentioned,
Right. Right.
you know. And it's like,
Well,
so how do might we do that?
yeah, I was just thinking like it's time of year when you have all of your usual stuff plus like a whole nother job of other stuff, right? In
Right.
terms of like year-end things at work, like year-end personal things, um, decision makings around healthcare, like, all of that sort of stuff. Plus like, family things that happen and increased like social engagements maybe around this time of year. There's a lot of family stuff that gets tricky and complicated, and wanting your family to be a certain way and maybe they're not, and like the sadness around that. Plus like all of the holiday dates and like navigating how do you do it?
Yeah.
You spend your time and finances and prezzies and all the things, you know.
Yeah. It's funny when we were building the list and talking about the podcast and how we could support. I was seeing it as like heavy layers of like just I don't even know what the construct of what I was seeing was, but it was just like just layer after layer after layer. And as you were talking just there, it was just like threads pulling in a million different directions. Like just there's just threads hanging off of you everywhere. And there's somebody on the end of every single one of them just tugging at you. It's like, how do I get back to me? How do I get
Right?
back to what I need right now? It's like, where do we
Yeah.
go from here?
Yeah, I love that. You want to take
Yeah,
the next part?
sure. So we talked about like expectations and reeling in how everyone else and including ourselves say it's supposed to be this time of year and like what might help us create ease around this. We talked about reality checks with trusted people, asking yourself if your expectations are realistic or like would you even put these expectations on anyone else? A lot of asking yourself too, right? Like asking yourself what your best cheerleader person would say to you. And that cheerleader person might be here on earth or they might be passed on and but somebody who's a voice that is always cheering you on and like the person you hear that like brings you joy and like supports you. Um time. Like do you really need to do all these things? What happens if you're judged? Like you actually get to decide how you want to spend your time, but it doesn't feel like that this time of year. So like coming to the place of, okay, let's get realistic about this the whole time thing and what is actually required of me. Looking back and taking stock of all the stuff you actually have accomplished and like celebrating that inventory of all the things you've done. And also acknowledging and really getting honest about what is your actual capacity. Like, what are you truly capable of right now? Work hard, try hard. We're all doing the best that we can on any given day, but honor your capacity. And if you're swamped and truly overwhelmed, just do one thing, one thing that will help you, and then do another thing, and then another thing. But I don't know. I'm seeing like these people taking like the biggest chunk of thing that they can find and doing that one thing. It's like, no, I mean a micro thing, like a teeny tiny little, like one thing, very minute. Um,
Like make
let's
the list
see.
of what your afternoon looks like, right? Or like
Yeah.
make the list of the things that need to get done in the next 14 hours. Like
Yes.
not, make Thanksgiving dinner or something.
Right. I mean, literally, like it could be making a list or doing a brain dump just to get some stuff out of your head and to get some accuracy and clarity in what you need. Right. Another thing, like animals take a pause, like NPAWS pause, right? If you're an animal lover, that's the best kind of pause, if you ask me. Oracle cards can be a useful tool. Just energetically good things to help you refuel and healthy boundaries, if that's something that you have some practice in, and if you've never practiced a healthy boundary before, just maybe even set the intention that you can and will someday. And now is not the time to dive in deeply into learning how to create a healthy boundary, but acknowledging that that can be part of like how you show up in the world.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like
Right.
just a general reminder about this time of year, like it's okay to say no, and it's okay that you don't have capacity for like all of the extra things.
I
Like
think
you can just say, that's not going to work for me.
Yeah. I think the other thing, like, because this time of year can get to be so, I feel like external, it's give, give, give. I'm going to make everything great and perfect and nice and shiny and whatever. But then internally, it's guilt, shame, unworthiness. Like, it's okay to actually take a loving moment for yourself this time of year. Like, honor
As
that.
Michelle is saying guilt shame, she's like pumping her arm so it looks like she's making like a song and dance out of it. It's like, oh my God, that's so true. We're like thumping with like guilt and shame on the inside.
Right.
Like we're having this little like guilt shame dance party. And like
Yeah.
just like all of our like all of our innards are just getting like sucked out of our body as we're like giving away everything that felt, right?
As if it's like this perfectly normal thing that we're, like, oh, like my guilt shame party. This is great. This feels so familiar. It's like, oh
Oh,
shit.
yes, so comfortable and so normal, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be like we get to practice like doing things more easily, like more gracefully, like just with more ease in general.
Right. And again, like these lists that we're talking about, this isn't with the idea that this is the magic pill, even this recipes that we've created. It's like, it's not, there is no magic pill. I hate to break it to you.
Right.
And there are steps we can take that give ourselves grace. There are steps we can take that, like, how about if we don't look ahead to 2025 and think about how great we're going to be or how great it's going to be or how much we wish we would have accomplished in 2024 and how, there's this pressure to like, oh, we're starting anew. I get to, the resolution thing and all that kind of stuff. What if we just reel it in, come to today, and let's just hop into this moment for a quick sec and just see if we can, you know, give ourselves that little gift of literally the present moment.
Yeah, I love that. I think that like goes right into our like official recipes, right?
Yeah.
So step one we talked about is just like regulating your physiology. So depending on how like stressed, overwhelmed, like not okay you are in that moment or this moment, um, like getting your body and your brain to calm down is really, really helpful because when you are in fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, your limbic system is activated, which is like like the kind of the midway point of your brain, kind of the center of your head. And that means that you're like in your feels and like you might be in that, fight, flight response. And so that means the front part of your brain, your prefrontal cortex, where like all of your decision making stuff happens, that might be powered down and it might be really hard to activate it and ask it to be helpful and do things for you. And so one of the things that can happen is our brain can think us into that place, our body can think us in, like feel us into that place, or an external like cue can take us into that place, right? And so a lot of times I get myself there. You know what I mean? Like I worry, I'm angsty. Like oftentimes my brain gets me there. It's not anybody else's fault. It's not an external, like, whoops, that thing happened, or my body's crabby. It's 1,000% my own brain. And so recognizing, like, okay, I'm in that place. Like, what can I do? And like one of the first things that anybody that's doing like mindfulness based stress reduction teaching will tell you is take a deep breath. Because when you have control over your breath, right, like your breathing is something you can control consciously or you don't have to control consciously. Your brain will just automatically do it for you. So a lot of times when people are in distress, their breaths are short, they're shallow, and they're faster than usual. And people really have like a slow respiration rate. It's like 14 breaths a minute or something. Like we're really not breathing very quickly when we're like relaxed and like okay. And so really being mindful about slowing your breath down and like exhaling one count longer than your inhale. So if you can control your exhale, your body will automatically inhale for you. And if you can be conscious and mindful about just lengthening your exhale and like slowly lengthening your inhale, and telling your body you got it, like I'm just going to focus on my breath, we're okay, we can do this, let's calm it down, your body and your brain will start to calm down. And so that's really, really helpful. And if you are not a human that can sit still and breathe and you are too zoomed up, like go outside, go for a walk, get on the treadmill, dance, put on angsty music, do whatever you need to do to just like get your body calmed down. And so it might be just like a big energy expel. I know a lot of people will shake and things like that, like shake their hands out or like do a, wild dance or whatever. But and like nature oftentimes like regulates physiology too. Like as a preschool teacher, you probably know that, Michelle. Like
Hmm.
kids get all zoomed up and like a little wily. You take them outside and everybody like is like back to baseline and everybody's good.
I love that you brought up preschool because it brought in another thing that I used to do when the
Yeah.
room was totally chaotic. Usually it was in the winter when like we couldn't get outside, right? I would literally be like, okay, everybody, for the next like 30 seconds, we're going to be as loud as we can possibly be. And they would yell and scream and, whatever they would do. And then it was like, okay, now we're going to go to the complete opposite of that. And we're going to look up and we're going to see a ceiling. And now we're just going to whisper for just, however, 15 seconds or whatever. And it's like, and then I would probably do a shake thing. I'm just like seeing myself in the classroom, have them do a little like shake your hands, shake your legs. Let's just shake it out, let's wiggle. And then it was like, okay, let's take a breath. How do you feel? And it was just like crazy how that would change the energy of a preschool room. They just needed to get the energy out, you know?
right? Like,
and
oh, and we're all reset.
and it was a reset. It was like a total distraction into whatever thread or loop they were in that moment. It like brought them back to the present moment, into their body, right? And then just into that place of, okay, I don't even remember what I was doing before. What are we going to do next? You better be prepared for what you can do next if you remember preschoolers. I'll say that.
They're like, guess what? I don't know either.
Yeah. Uh, but that's just such a great point. I love your point about breathing and how like it's something our brain does and we don't have to think about, but also we get to choose control if we want to, and how beautiful that is, that in and of itself will create parasympathetic nervous system.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. It'll help your body and your brain calm down. And then you get to like ideally turn on your prefrontal cortex again and like be able to make some choices that are like more helpful. Do you want to take that second one, the second point, speaking of?
Yeah, sure. So next step one. Step one might be all you have in any given day. And if step one works and you have step two, go for it. And that is to get curious and ask yourself what might help you right now. And if you're in a place where it's impossible and the answer is absolutely nothing, A, see step one, go back to your physiology. And B, ask for outside help. You have your people that you can ask, lean into and ask. And if you don't have your people that you can lean into and ask, you know, find a resource that can help you. Sometimes it's I really just keep hearing circle back to one. Like just really go to that physiology. If number two, your answer is still nothing, spend a little more time in number one. Spend a little more time regulating your physiology so that you can ask what might help you right now.
And you know, in our group of humans, we talk a lot about sort of our self-care toolkits and like in knowing the things that will help you, right? Knowing the things that will help you feel like Michelle and I talked earlier about like this time of year, it feels like our lives are not in our control. Like our lives are dictated by other people's expectations of us. And then everything feels out of control because we're giving away our sense of control and like what we're willing and not willing to do. Right. And so if we can like pull back and say like, wait, whoa. I actually have an internal locus of control. Like these are my choices that I'm making about what's going on and how I'm spending my time and energy. That like brings my anxiety down, right? Like, okay, I'm actually making the choice here. I'm not just like going along for the ride and doing whatever everyone else expects me to do because I'm not gonna be vertical or functional if I do that. So
Yeah.
you know, figuring out like what's one thing that you can do to help yourself. And Michelle and I came up with a couple of different ideas. So we'll kind of we'll walk you through a few things, but this might also be a time to pause and like brainstorm for yourself, right? So if you know that going outside is like a hardcore reset, that needs to be on your list, right? If you know that hopping on the treadmill and going for a walk or going for a jog, and listening to angry music and just, you know, being out, like not in your own head for a while, like great. So we talked about like organizing something or yourself or like making a list, doing a brain dump.
Especially if you're in overwhelm.
Yes.
Like, especially if overwhelm is at your forefront, like that organize and brain dump can be just like such a huge weight off your shoulders, right?
Yes, totally. Yeah. And just like free association writing. So like, I'm going to write 2 pages. I'm going to write 2 pages and just like whatever comes out, comes out. And then I'm going to get rid of it. I'll shred it. I'll burn it. Nobody else has to see this, but I'm just going to and like get it out.
Yeah.
We also talked about phoning a friend. I'm lucky enough that I have those people where I call and I'm saying, I have to do this, and this. And they go, what in the actual hell are you doing? There's no way you're going to get that done. Stop. Like, take at least 3 things off that list, right? Like, you think you are Martha Stewart? Like, pull it together. So, like, phoning another person who will also be like, oh my gosh, my life is a complete chaotic mess too. Want to talk about it?
Yeah.
Like, oh, that's not so bad. Okay. It's not just me.
Right.
Connecting with a loved one or guide. So we talked about like, you know, who's your biggest cheerleader? Maybe it's a person here right now and in this time and place, and maybe it's a person that is otherworldly, and that's okay. But having a conversation or a connection or a check-in with somebody can be really, really helpful. Even just like taking a bath. I mean, that kind of goes back to step 1, right? Like regulating your physiology. You know, running your hands under cold water, taking a bath, finding a heating pad, snugging a creature. You know, finding the things that are like soothing and helpful
Hmm.
And maybe it like hits both spots, right? Maybe it helps regulate your physiology, and maybe it is just like a self-soothing thing that helps you kind of get your like sense of control back so that you can take like the next best step.
Yeah.
And the last one that we talked about was like just set a timer for 15 minutes and do something pleasurable to get out of your head. Um, Ideally something that makes you smile and that usually brings you joy. Maybe it's going to be like a grinchy struggle to get yourself to smile and like,
Yeah.
have a good time in that moment. But there is like a lot of research. So dialectical behavior therapy uses this skill in in their, is it emotion reg? I think it's in their emotion regulation module, but they talk about like doing opposite actions. So if I'm really, really sad and really down and lethargic and have no energy and don't want to do a damn thing, like watching a comedy, or
Mm.
listening to like, somebody really, really funny on a podcast, or even just listening to like, my husband and I used to listen to Jerry Seinfeld stand up in the car when we were on road trips. Freaking hysterical, like the old school stuff, so good. So that is a very like, I'm going all in. I'm just going to try the thing and try to get my like, basically, I'm going to try to like change my emotion and like get my body to like respond differently, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So take a pause. You can pause us and like make a list for yourself of things that actually might be helpful. Some of the things on our list might fit, some of them won't. But come up with some things that, maybe at least like five. So that, when you're looking at the list and you're like, "Meh, I don't want to do that." You have some other choices.
Because the reality is this is going to release early enough that you'll have a little bit of time, hopefully, before it gets, the chaos is, well, I shouldn't say the chaos is going to build because that's not fair, because maybe that's not true for some people.
Right.
For many, the chaos will build from now until, I don't know, January 5th. You know what I mean? Till we get over it.
So we all get back to work and we're all tired.
They're like, okay, finally, it's over. Now we get to move on, right? But like we're saying this, like we can move on before. Like we don't have to get to that place of like feeling like we need to move on. We can get to the place of like, oh, I'm actually functioning. This is great. You
Right. And
know,
it's not as hard as usual this time, maybe.
right.
That's
Exactly.
cool.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Where did we leave off?
Number four.
Oh, number 4. Yeah. Engaging in creativity and or play. There's just so many ways to do this. Heck, we've named a million things already. Well, a million's a stretch, but we've named a lot of things that are creative and playful, like dance and music and writing. And I mean, all those things can be creative and
Mhm.
playful. They can also be chores. It depends on how they feel to you. So you're going to know what feels creative and playful for you more than we're going to know. But I think about things like I do reflect on teaching preschool a lot when I think about creativity and play. I think about things as simple as like skipping. How many adults do you know that skip? But like for me, skipping is layered because I have memories from when fun days when I used to teach preschool and I feel like a kid again. So for me, skipping, like immediately I go right to hopscotch and I'm like, oh, hopscotch. Where's my chalk? It's so silly. But, be silly, be creative, be playful, and find people that'll be silly with you. Or if you're shy, just go all out silly on your own when no one's watching and have at it. Yeah.
Or find small ones because they're often silly and they love it when adults are silly and
Oh
it
gosh.
takes you out of your head and, or
Animals
really
do
some
that too.
adolescents and that'll feel
Yeah.
really.
There's just so many different ways you can do that. But sometimes, especially in these times, you have to be mindful and intentional about it. You have to actually like create the space to do it. It's not like it's just like, oh wow, I just played and it happened organically. You're probably gonna have to carve out some time and some intention with that one. And then be intentional about every single choice that you make during this time. It like brings a sense of control back to you. And so you really can be intentional. Like I'm intentionally going to A, B, or C. And sometimes I'm not saying it all has to be pleasant or is going to be pleasant, but when you are intentional about the choice you make and how you show up within A, B, and C, there is a sense of power and control of self that comes with that. That seems like maybe a subtle, silly little thing, but I find it really powerful for people.
Michelle mentioned earlier that like your capacity for doing like the full recipe, like that 1 through 4 or 1 through 5 is going to change on any given day, right?
Mhm.
And there might be days that you can just do number 1, or you can just work on regulating your physiology, and that's all you have in you, and that is perfect. That's exactly what you're supposed to do that day then, right? And there might be days where you're like, okay, I regulated my physiology. Like, okay, what's next, right? And then you might be like, okay, like I'm going to settle down and sort of get curious about like, okay, what's actually going to help me right now? And that's great. And if, it's just going to depend on how you're feeling and what you need, and you'll figure it out. And you may rearrange this list. You may add things between the steps, like
Right.
this, great, make it yours. We're just giving you sort of a jumping off place and some ideas around like just how to navigate all of the layers of like November through January, like at the beginning of January.
Yeah. It's a place to start.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
And absolutely make it yours. And when you were speaking, I was thinking about here's another key note to like just pay attention to or be mindful of as you're working with this RecipEASE if it calls to you. And that is use it even when you're not maxed out. Like
Mhm.
especially when you're not maxed out. Like use it just on any given day, every given day, so that you can build that energy and that, strength within so that you have energy and capacity that builds because you're being mindful and intentional about how you're showing up.
Yeah, wouldn't it be amazing to actually end with like a cushion, like to roll in like into the new year not depleted and not
Right.
exhausted and hung over, like emotionally, energetically, like hung over from the holidays, right?
Right.
Totally wiped because like you took on way too much and ran yourself ragged, right? Like wouldn't
Yeah.
it be amazing to just be like, I got through this one pretty well. Awesome. I did great.
Right. So good. Yeah. All right. So we just talked about capacity and the other thing we talked about was just you might surprise yourself and do more of the steps than you really thought you might have the capacity to do.
Hmm.
And just like being open to like, I don't have a set number I have to get to. I'm just open to exploring this list and stopping when it feels right for me today in this
Hmm.
moment. And then the other, like the seventh thing we have on this RecipEASE is this, like doing this list is outside of your norm. And because I mean, the chance of you like dropping into this exact list being your exact routine are pretty slim to none. But there's something about creating something new and doing something outside of your usual pattern. It helps take you out of the programming, the autopilot, the survival mode, and puts you into like a new state. And it does invite curiosity because it's new to you, so it feels different. So then by nature we're going to be inquisitive about it and explore it and decide and discern, ooh, what if this is working for me, and what if this do I need to change and update and make it mine. You look deep in thought.
I am deep in thought. I was just thinking about like adding like new routines and like adding new things that are meaningful, and
Yeah.
that you're going to run into barriers when thinking about using this, which
Hmm.
include time and interruptions and like other things feel like a priority. And do I really have time to take care of myself and do this? And I was just thinking about the reality is like, yes, you probably do. And also like, um, other things are going to have to slide, right? And like,
Hmm.
and so just thinking about like in the big picture, like what are your priorities? And so acknowledging like, well, I want to be a priority like long term,
Hmm.
not just like January through
Right.
through
Not,
mid-November,
yeah.
putting myself on hold and going back into old patterns, because like this is a time of year that I personally very, very much struggle with, sliding into patterns of like pleasing other people and wanting to show up a certain way and like expectations and wanting to go all out and do all the things for all the people. And the reality is like as I age, I'm tired. I have chronic pain. Like my pain generally gets worse this time of year for lots of reasons. And like I want to be vertical and functional for it, right? Like I want to
Yeah.
enjoy it and I don't want to be exhausted and have it be a chore. So like this is helpful for me to think about like, okay, so how am I actually going to do this? Like how am I going to incorporate this on the daily and like certainly the weekly so that I don't end up in my usual not paying attention, just trying to survive the next couple of months, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's it. I mean, that's it. You get to decide. And
Mhm.
here's the thing, you can choose yourself. All of you can choose yourself.
We're allowed.
It's allowed. And the more you do it, the more ease that comes into your life. I cannot stress that enough. And I also understand that it's challenging to do, which is why this recipes came in. And, we talked about it for a long time. We got wordy. It's important to like give a lot of examples to make it as clear as possible. And then you pull the things that resonate with you,
Mhm.
right? But ultimately, like this recipes, if you choose to engage with it, you can build it for yourself. You can build it aligned with you. Start with some sort of regulating your physiology. Like, but for you, that might not be deep breaths, a walk, a run, or a dance. It might be something different for you. The deep breaths will organically happen. Physiology, like with regard to physiology, if you're in a relaxed state, your breath is going to happen.
Mhm.
So whether you're doing that mindfully or you've found something that works for your physiology, it's a good checks and balance. Like, is my breath shallow and up in my chest, or how do I actually have a slower, relaxed, deep breath, right? How you work your way and navigate your way through this list gets to be yours. I can't stress that enough. Like, we're giving you examples and ideas of things to explore and play with and be curious about. And ultimately, you'll find what works for you. And when you find that, play with it, engage with it, incorporate it, and recognize that everything is temporary and movable. So it might evolve and grow with you on any given day. So, like when we say a recipes, it's like there's a part of me that's like, well, this sounds very structured and like this is how it has to be and how it's going to work. But like, I don't know how you cook, but I know how my mom cooked and she had recipes and then she would cross things out and write her notes and say what she exchanged. And then it would be updated, 2 months later, she tried another thing and like that, and think more things would be crossed out and she would do it like cook, be a chef, like with your recipes and play and see what works for you. And if we can support you in any way, for sure, like reach out, put a comment on. We're happy to do more, you know, podcasts like this if it's helpful. It just feels like a time of year where I feel it building. Kat feels it building. We were talking about it, and it's like, let's do a podcast in the hopes of offering some sort of support. Like,
Mhm.
we'll be your cheerleaders.
100%. Yes.
Yeah.
And we can be the person that you call or text and say, oh my gosh, the list is so long.
Yeah, right. Yeah, you can comment on the podcast or send an email or all those
Yeah.
different things.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's available here for you. And creating it seems like a weird time of year to invite people to change, to make a change or to create new routines. And also, it's the perfect time of year to create change for yourself in a way that is supportive of you first. That is how you build energy and that is how you actually have more capacity to be in service if that's your thing. And a lot of people, that is their thing. I mean, I think like if I break it down to all the way back to the nugget of like, why are we here? What is our purpose? I think learn how to love yourself first. And the reason for that is so that you can be in service to others to make the world a better place. Like if we're just going to simplify everything, like that makes
Hmm.
sense to me. You know, I don't think we're here for ourselves, but if we don't learn to take care of ourselves and love ourselves and treat ourselves with compassion and kindness, then how can we possibly ripple out into the world anything, you know? So to be able to ripple out that compassion and kindness that makes it better is just so good. So I'm hoping this helped. What do you feel? Do you feel like we missed anything? Well, I mean, I'm sure we missed a lot, but that's for them to explore. That's not
Yeah.
for
I
us
mean,
to discover and uncover. That's for them to do.
no, I feel like I think that's a good sum up.
All
Of what we
right.
talked about.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you for being here again. I really appreciate
Absolutely.
you
Good
and your
work.
time.
Yeah.
That was fun.
Thanks for having me.
I'm gonna be I'm gonna be listening to this podcast a few times.
Oh,
All right, I think that's a wrap for today. Bye. Be you every day. Thanks, Kat.
yeah.
We're both waving.